All right, welcome everyone. This is Hugh Culver, and this webinar is called SOS, How to Make SOS Work for You. And this is an ongoing series of webinars that I'll be putting on throughout the year for the SOS members. So that's the people that have put their trust in us to go and get more traffic for them for their blog. And each webinar has a different topic, and each webinar is archived. And so we've already got a couple of webinars. We did one on how to get images for your blog, and that's already on the site at hughculver.com/SOS-member-resources. Also, we did one on how to write a better blog. That's there. And then today, we're doing the one how to get the best from SOS. So each time we do it, we'll just archive it, and it'll be there as a resource for everybody to go back and look at. So today, in particular, we're going to be looking at how to actually make SOS work better for you with lots of little tricks and devices, some of which I've already implemented on my site and I'm seeing good results, and some of which I'm going to be doing in the future. On some of these you're going to be able to, you may actually already be doing them, and some of them this is like a perfect thing for next year for your goals. So I'll be going through them. I'll be asking you to, kind of like take, ask questions if you got questions, of course. Just use the Q&A box. But this is really designed as a resource for you to go back to. In other words, as I'm going through different topics, you may find that, wow, that's a long list, and I'd like to actually dig into each one of those points. Well, it's always going to be there for you. It's a resource to go back to, as well as I'm happy to answer any question that you've got as best as I can. So if you want to know what's the link to go and get access to something I talk about, or have I got a good example of it, I'll do my best to dig that information up for you. So a quick update on SOS. So we are now entering into our 6th month. It's still really a baby. And as we've been going through it, we've been doing lots of what Eric Rees would call pivots. So our pivots have been everything from, who does the work for us. Now, as you probably know, we're using all North Americans, and we now have, there's 6 of us on the team that are doing the work. And we now have added some clients, some members. Some members have not continued with SOS, and that's just a part of the natural attrition that we expected as they start to see whether it's a fit or not. But we are seeing really good results across the board. So we're seeing anything from 10% to even 20% increase in traffic. And we're going to try and continue to make these improvements every week as we work with our members, and to create better systems, create our own proprietary systems, and we'll also try to do our best to keep you up to speed in terms of what those changes are and how they impact you. So let's start with a quick overview of what the heck is SOS for. So I put together this crazy schematic for you, and I want to go through it right now so you can just get an idea of what it's all about. So first of all, SOS takes 3 main pieces of content: your blog, what we call authority sites, so these are non-competing high traffic sites, and mixes them with just a few quotations every month. We actually put in 10 over the whole course of the month. That produces, with the help of your content manager, which is a dedicated person for you, that produces over 200 posts a month, which go to, right now, they go to Google+, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And then that drives traffic to your blog. From the blog, we want to attract people to go to your opt-in. That builds your list. That directs people to sales and also future sales. And this whole cycle, it's really important to just keep this in mind, because SOS really is not about getting more Facebook followers or getting more likes to your, or more followers on LinkedIn or more likes to your comments. It's really about driving sales by getting people onto your list. And this is just a very common strategy that most of the A-listers will preach about, and that is that the gold is in the list. You want to build your list. So that's what SOS is all about. All right, so let's start looking at what are some of the goals that you might want to consider for SOS. So one of the first ones, of course, is sales inquiries and sales closes. So in my business, I'm always looking at keynote inquiries and keynote closes, and what ratio am I getting? I know if I can get a person on the phone, I have a much higher percentage of close, but first I've got to get that inquiry to come in. And so I know that SOS is a big part of that strategy, but there's other things that I do that are more campaign focused. For example, doing webinars like I did yesterday. Secondly, you might want to look at your net opt-ins per month. And what I mean by net is this is the people that have joined minus the people that have left. So once you start doing email marketing using your list, you're naturally going to start to lose a few people. And if you're a big organization like Mike Stelzner's Social Media Examiner, they lose to the order of like 1,000 people a month, but they gain 10,000 a month. But on a smaller scale, you might be seeing that you're losing 10 to 30 people a month. But what you want to be doing is continually having a net positive return, and you're going to get that information only from your email supplier. So whether you're using MailChimp or Aweber or Omniport or Infusionsoft. It's a really good number to be looking at every month and to keeping track of. So the other number to be looking at is your uniques or your users. And so unique and users are the same thing. And those are the individual unique people that have come to your site. So some people call them uniques, other people call them users, and that's provided for you in your Google Analytics report, which I'll show you in just a minute. Another goal would be your social media followers. And this is interesting. There's a big transition going on now in terms of online marketing, and that is, the sort of like downgrading the value of social media followers. Some people even call them vanity metrics because really, they really are, they maybe make you feel good, but they aren't necessarily tangible benefits. But with SOS, it is actually an important part of the strategy is that the more followers that you have, the more impact our posts will have. In other words, if you got only 10 followers on Facebook or 100 followers on Twitter, it's pretty hard for all of these posts that SOS is generating to get much traction. So it does make a difference as far as getting people to actually view your posts. So there's some examples of like overall goals that I might be looking at. So one is actually dollars in hand, which is my sales. Another one is, okay, so how big is my list getting? Is it growing? Another one is, what's my sort of overall traffic to my site? Because that's going to be an indicator of the first two. And then finally, social media followers, which is really an indicator of how much traction SOS can have. So with that in mind, I want to look at, well, what can I actually measure? Now again, don't worry about all these lists because this will be saved for you as a recording. So one of the first things that I would measure would be my open rate. And so open rate is the number of people that actually open your emails. And so if email is a main strategy for you, a really interesting thing to look at is week over week, well, how many people actually open your email? So like in our business, we might get something like 13% or 10% of the people. I think we're at really about 10%, maybe 11% actually open our emails. Now more people will open it over time. That's one of the fascinating things about emails is you'll see people like even 2 weeks later opening an old email. But what I look at is initially how many people open it. So for me, we send out for my business, we send out an email every Sunday morning at 7 a.m., which announces the latest blog. And we don't really ask for anything. We just sort of let people know, hey, this is the latest blog. And we're very interested to know, well, how many people actually opened it, because that's a really big indicator. All things being equal, that's a big indicator of whether or not the topic was actually attractive to people. Secondly, I can be looking at my uniques and my users. So is that going up or that going down? And again, I'm going to get that one from my Google Analytics. I want to be looking at my top blog posts. I'll come back to that in just a minute. That to me is a really important indicator of what I should be creating more of. So one of the simplest ways to get more traction with SOS is to keep looking at what are the top 3 blogs that my readers are enjoying, despite and regardless of whether or not it's current or whether or not it's actually what you're thinking you want to write about. And I'll show you more about that in just a minute. Next, I want to be looking at my bounce rate. So bounce rate very simply means it's the percentage of people that leave after one page. So 100% bounce rate would mean nobody goes beyond the page that they were directed to or that they found on SEO. So they go to one page on your site and then they immediately leave. And you'll see a very high bounce rate, like in the order of above 70%, even above 80%. But you'll also see a very low session time or session rate. That means that they spend very, very little time on there. So that's not a good thing. The lower the bounce rate, the better. That means they're more engaged, they're exploring your site, they're looking at different things. And I'll cover a few ways to make that happen in this recording. Another thing you want to look at is completions. And so for some of the SOS members, we've been able to set up a completion a measure for you, or a report, I should say, on your Google Analytics monthly report. And that's sometimes tricky. The way that that works is, so first of all, what completion means is a goal was completed. And the way that we do it with SOS is we look for the success page that is generated with an opt-in. So when someone gives you their name and email, we look at what is the next page that pops up. And if that's a page that Google Analytics can track, then we will put that into your analytics report. And what you'll see is a little number literally every day showing how many people are actually completing the first step of the opt-in. Now keep in mind, this is only the first step. In other words, they got to the success page. It does not mean that they clicked on the double opt-in email. So this gets kind of complicated, but you remember there's two opt-ins. One is on your website where they actually enter name and email. The second opt-in is when they receive the confirmation email and they click on that link. Well, Google Analytics cannot track that. What it can track is the first step. Okay, so we're going to be continuing to explore that because we want to be able to give those kind of metrics to you, but you may be seeing that already on your analytics report. Also, average session duration that I've already mentioned is really an important indication of how interesting your site is or how rich your site is. And then finally, social media shares. And I put that last because to me it's, it's kind of it's an interesting indicator. I've got some blogs that are getting over 100, 110 shares, which is really great for my ego, but it doesn't necessarily mean much because there could be 1,000 people that actually enjoyed the blog, but only a few people actually take the time to link. And so like my latest blog went out, and I think it's got like 4 shares on it. So of course I'm going to look at it, and I'm going to wonder, well, what happened and why are there so few shares? But I'm not going to worry as much about it. What I'm more interested in is how many people are actually joining my list since Sunday. All right, so let's go a little deeper on some of these things to measure. I'll just check, see if I have any questions. All right. Okay, so Steve says he lost the audio, but it looks like Steve, you signed in again, which is great. Charlie, good to see you on the call, my friend. All right, so here's a little deeper. So now, this is your typical reporting structure on Google Analytics. So everybody that logs into Analytics on their own will see this, more or less. And so what you're seeing across the top, obviously, is a graph that shows actually sessions. Now, sessions is different than users. In fact, you can look at this, these numbers here, and you can see that this 6,608 sessions, that's actually the number of times in the last 30 days people went to that site. But it's actually only 4,723 that were actually unique. So those are called your uniques. And that's the number you're most interested in. So it's interesting that 6,600 times someone went to the site. But what's more interesting is that 4,723 people uniquely went to the site. So that means I had 4,723 eyeballs on that site. Then we've got page views, which is the total number of pages that they actually went through, which actually works out to about 1.6 per session, which means that my bounce rate is going to be over here is 74% is what it works out to. So that means that 74% of the people only stayed on one page. So that means that 26% of the people explored a second page. And on average, we had 1.6 pages per session. Duration is just under 2 minutes, which is a little bit low. Longer blogs or more videos will increase that. Also cross-linking, which is where you link from one blog to the other, will definitely increase that. And then this number here, 58.79% new sessions, is an estimate of the number of sessions that actually were new this month. So I kind of ignore that number because I'm not sure how very accurate it is, but it's an estimate of how many of these 6,600 people actually were new this month. And I think that's kind of highly inaccurate on this website. So that's what you can glean from those sorts of numbers. That's kind of what they all mean, kind of really quickly. If you want to go a little deeper, and we do give you a snapshot with your SOS dashboard, but if you want to go a little deeper in terms of the response rate, I really like going to this one here. And what I do is on the left-hand side is I click on Behavior Overview. So Behavior Overview, and that's on the left-hand side. And again, Google Analytics is really crazy because if you look up here, there's another behavior, but you want to go behavior as a main feature, a main menu bar with the square beside it. Open that up, and then you'll see Overview. Click on Overview. the first thing I look at is, well, what are my top blogs? And so this is, you'll see that some of these hyperlinks here are actually not blogs. Like this one with just a /, this is actually a main page. This one down here is resources. This one is actually a category listing. So what I'm looking for is the ones that actually have a recognizable blog name. The next thing that I do is I actually will click on the little square beside it, which is actually a hyperlink to open it. And if I do that, for example, with this one, this is actually my blog site, you'll see never use 15 repetitive redundancies. So that's ranking #1 now on my blog. And if I click on that little button, what happens is it will pop up actually a snapshot of that blog. And what that's good for, and this is what we actually do, is we do this before we do your posting, is we look at these top 3 and we grab that URL up there. And that's going to be one of the main things that we share when we set up your post for the following month, is your top 3 ranking blog posts. But the reason I wanted to show it to you today is because a really simple strategy that's getting a lot of popularity is to simply go through and for you to keep in mind what's ranking. So in my case, it's kind of bizarre because, for example, here I wrote a blog post which is now probably 3 weeks old, which is around repetitive redundancies, which is a redundancy in itself, which is the #1 ranking one. So that's interesting. So people are very interested in things around communication skills and quirky little things to do with communication. Secondly was about to-do lists and getting organized. So that's really my bailiwick, so I would expect that one to be popular. And then the third one, which continues to blow me away, is from, I think, April, which has to do with why $100,000 a year won't make you rich. And so of all the blog posts, that one consistently is in the top 3. So what this tells me is it gives me some clues in terms of what I should be writing next. And I don't need to combine all 3 of these topics, but as I write my next blog, I should be thinking, okay, what is it that they would find interesting? So for example, the blog I'm working on right now is how to survive Christmas, and I'm going to include in there something about money. So there'll be something in there about money and regrets and all that sort of stuff. So that's just a really important strategy for you to be looking at, is what is it that people are reading? You know, one of the things I always remind myself is, despite all the great advice I get and despite all my great ideas, Google Analytics doesn't lie. So whatever Google Analytics is showing me is like literally minute by minute. That's what people actually are doing on my site. And so
you are now unmuted.
Your SOS membership includes getting a report. Right now it's set to come out on the 25th of every month. So you should be getting that dashboard report. But in addition, you can log in anytime and go a little deeper. Okay, so now I want to get into some advice, and the advice I want to share with you is how to make your blog sexy. So here's some quick ideas that I'm experimenting with, and from my research I'm finding are really simple things that we can do. So let's just give it some context. Why do I care about making my blog sexy? Well, what does SOS do? SOS drives traffic to your blog. That's what we're doing. Over 55% of all of our SOS posts are directly going to your blog. So when people arrive at the blog, kind of like the better it reads, the more interesting it is. That's what I mean by sexy. The more intriguing, controversial, the better the images, the more likely they will stay and they will share it. So here's some quick things. First of all is to personalize it. I was speaking with a very well-known speaker in the United States 2 weeks ago, and my first piece of advice after scanning a number of her most recent blogs was that she's got to talk about herself more often. She talks like a lecturer. She talks like it's a really dry business book. I said, just tell us about you. Like, tell us what happened last week. Tell us what happened in an airport with your kids, like whatever. But personalize it to me means, reveal a bit of yourself. That's what people want to know. They can find advice anywhere. Probably everybody on this call, everybody watching this video, myself included, we're not doing anything new. Now we have a spin on it, but we're not doing anything new. What will make us unique is if we share the personality behind the brand. Okay. Secondly is to include more images. So I was just reading a report, really excellent report that was about using LinkedIn, which I'll talk about in just a few minutes, and putting your articles on Pulse. And the statistics, and this is based on 3,000 LinkedIn Pulse articles, was that 5 images or more actually made your articles much more popular. And the same thing on your blog. I wouldn't go to 5 on your blog, but I would say probably you could go as easily a main image and at least 1 more would be quite safe. I'm now doing at least 1 more every time. More subheads. So that's the heading after the main heading. To break up the text, it's eye candy. As people are scanning your article, they see the heading coming, and it's just like reading a book. You know, if the chapter is 100 pages long, you might get bored about halfway through, but if the chapter is like 4 pages and there's another one coming up, you might be engaged to go that next step and get to the end of the chapter. Same thing here. Shorter sentences, we talked about that in my last webinar. This is just a style issue, but shorter sentences, and I'll show you an example in a minute, make it easier and faster for people to read because you're going to have, and also more paragraph breaks so that people move their eye down the page. Insert a quote or a fact or a statistic to break up the text, so something that is intriguing that comes from a third party. Use stories to intrigue people. People love stories, especially if the story is unique, and I think especially if it's about you. Be controversial sometimes in terms of your topic, like challenge people. Write a headline that's actually contrarian. And then drive solutions to how-tos. And this is just a common strategy, which is, you know, give people advice, but also tell them what they need to do. So let's look at these a little bit more in detail. So this is like from my last blog, not saying that this is the second to last blog, I should say, not saying this is perfect, but here's some of the things I am trying to do. So first of all, it's a keyword-rich title. So, you know, this is sometimes considered a little overkill, but I like to go to the Google Keyword Planner tool, and I just spend a couple of minutes on there, and I check out my topics. So for example, I put the word SMART goals in this headline because SMART goals is a really high-ranking, non-competing title. And so it's just something that I know would you know, get people's attention. So I will try and put in a phrase that I think is going to rank well from an SEO perspective. Next, I'm going to include either you or your or a list in the title because those are definitely going to get me more traffic. People love that stuff. I'm going to include an intriguing opening. So this one starts with, it's happening. The weather has changed, malls are full, ads are pushing Christmas, and we haven't wrapped up 2014 yet. Ugh. So I'm just trying to give them something that's going to make them want to read on. I make it about them. So I use the word you quite a lot in the first paragraph. Actually, throughout I use the word you. I use frequent subheads, as you can see here, to break up the text so that as they're reading down, they get this eye candy that actually is going to draw them down. I share my story in the first opening. So at some point in here, I'm going to talk about what goes on for me this time of the year. So what is it that I struggle with? This is to personalize it, of course. I use shorter sentences. Oh, I actually put that in twice. I must have thought that was such a good point. It's actually in twice. And I provide solutions. So at the bottom of this blog, I also have solutions that usually just a simple bullet point list that I can refer to. So these are just some of the things I always try and do in every blog. And you know, frankly, I find now I'm spending a lot more time on my blogs, but I'm also getting better results from my blog. And just by spending extra time to really work over that text and to really try and make sure everything's included in the blog, and then to pick out the images. So there's a whole host of things that you can try. I would just encourage you to just try one thing different next time. You know, more subheads or shorter paragraphs, or just go through and remove unnecessary words. Like that is a really easy one to remove. If you just look at most sentences, if you remove the word that, you actually make the sentence much stronger. Use hyphens more often. Use semicolons. Break a sentence into 2 parts. So all of these little techniques are going to make your blog post easier to read. So actually, let's just do a little check-in now. So if you're on the call, if you want to just type in the Q&A, which one of these actually has got your attention? Which one do you think that you could use in your blog post that might get you more traffic? And just go type that in the Q&A for a second as I set up my next slide. That'd be really helpful for me to know. Okay, so Sarah, whose birthday it is today, by the way. So Sarah says short sentences. And actually, that was a very good short sentence there, by the way. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. Oh, Colette says keyword-rich title. Happy birthday, Sarah. That's sweet. And Charlie says keyword-rich title. The other thing, too, by the way, and you probably all know this, but a really shortcut to the keyword-rich title is just simply to use your Google your Google search tool in your browser. And it's kind of a hacky way of doing it, but it actually works quite well. So, in other words, type the sentence that you're thinking about using into your Google search bar in your browser and just see what it suggests. Look at what it suggests. What it is suggesting is the top ranked searches that are similar to what you're typing. And it's just a really quick way to see if you're actually somewhat on track. Okay, and Steve says you reminded me about keeping it about them. Yeah, it's good. And so these are just like some really simple things you can do. There's a couple of really good articles that Noel Kagan on his site OKDork has published recently that I will include, I will circulate with this. And it's really, one of them is on research done by a guy named Garrett Moon, who runs a company called CoSchedule. Over 1 million blog posts were analyzed, and what they looked at was what are the most popular blog posts. So I will include a link to that article in the email that goes out after this. Okay, let's make them stay on the site. So this is a really important strategy. I get them to the site. SOS is doing its job, thankfully. Now they're on the site. Now I need to keep them on the site. I want to get my bounce rate down, like a lower percent bounce rate. I want to get the number of minutes they spend on my site up. So how do I do it? First of all, cross-link. And this is something that we need to do on our site more often. I mean, we're doing a good job now, I think, with the recent blogs, but now I need to go back and retrofit some of my blogs, and that is to cross-link. So what I do is I think about my top 10 blog posts that I want to drive traffic to, and as I go through each blog post or as I write a new one, I simply link to that blog post. So I might say in brackets, see also this, and then I put the title in and I link to that title. Or I might say, I go deeper on this topic here, and then I link to that title. But the idea is to have 2 or 3 of those cross links in every blog post. And then what happens is someone's reading one blog post, they see that there's more content over here, and they jump over and they read another blog post. Second strategy is video resources. So I did a webinar yesterday. We had people on the call from India, Switzerland, South Dakota, Ontario, like all over the place. And this lady from India said, I love your videos. I've learned a lot from them. And I thought, oh my goodness, of all the things on my site, of all the things I've created in the last 12 months, it's the videos that continually seem to make an impression on people. So it does not have to be fancy, but they have to be available. So even a 2-3 minute video where you explain something to people, they will probably refer to that more often than anything that you've written. Make them available. An FAQ page, so for example, and we're using a really simple little plugin on our WordPress site now that reveals FAQs, and I will put a link to that plugin as well. Because I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's just called something like FAQ. And what it allows us to do is to really quickly create a drop-down FAQ. So you see the question, and then the person clicks on the question, and it reveals what the answer is. So your FAQ could be anything to do with the stuff that you promote and that you sell. Easy navigation. What I mean by that is make it really easy for people to find the next thing. So just like small deal, but like this week I changed Meet Hugh on my navigation bar to Hugh Speaks, because I realized really in that Meet Hugh navigation bar menu item, there really is no other objective on that page than to sell my speaking. So why don't we just say Hugh Speaks? And so it's a small thing, but it's an important change because that's really what I want to get people to go to. Similarly, if you're in your blog and you're talking about a product you've got, put the link right there in the blog so people can go and see that actual product. Don't send them to the page. Send them to the product listing. Have an attractive offer. So have something, we'll talk about this more with your opt-ins, that they might want to go and add their name to the list. Ask for comments is a really simple overlooked strategy in your blog, is to ask people to comment. and then to put a top post list on your site. So a top post list could be something that looks like this, which is, I guess, oh, that's Michael Hyatt. So he's got a fancy one here on the right-hand side. He's got some kind of a widget where he's got his top list. This is the one off my site, which is on the right-hand side. It's organized by category, so making money, productivity, speaking. Also, this is off of Mark Sisson's site, Grok On, Mark's Daily Apple, so there he's got it there. It does not have to be anything complicated. Like ours is just a simple widget where we just typed in the links. But the idea here is that these top quote top posts do not necessarily have to be really the top posts, but they can be the ones that you want to get traffic to. So for example, if you've got a blog post that really it really describes a product that you've got really well, or it promotes the idea of a product or whatever, we'll put that in your top post and let people go over there and link on it. It's going to keep them on the site longer, and it's going to send them to where you want them to go. Okay, get more opt-ins. All right, so let's look at how to do that. This is the heart of what SOS is all about, so let's look at how to get more opt-ins. First of all, I would really encourage you to experiment with your opt-in gift. So currently we're using a video and it's not really working. So we're finding that either we're not promoting it the proper way or people just don't find it attractive, but the traffic to it is just not high enough for us. Like I think we're getting like 160 people a month or something going there, but it's not really doing much for us. So we're probably going to go back to our ebook because we found that worked really well, and we might experiment with that for a while. But it doesn't have to be super fancy or anything extravagant, but you should experiment with your opt-in gift or the offer you're giving them. Experiment also with the offer, and what I mean by that is the language you use. So for example, saying join my newsletter is kind of old news. Like most people don't want to be on a newsletter. They want to be kept up to date. They want tips and tricks. They want insider secrets. They want to know some kind of fast track to solving a problem. Craig Valentine is a really well-known past Toastmaster international winner, and he says that the person that can solve the problem of getting someone from A to Z the fastest is the most valuable. So you just need to figure out, okay, how can I help people get from A to Z, from where they are to where they want to be the fastest in the least painful way, and offer that in your opt-in gift, and you'll have a lot of response. Use a pop-up. Lots of controversy around pop-ups, but the only thing that's not controversial is the fact that they work. Everybody agrees once they start using them. So we use one called Opt-in Monster, and we find that that's really powerful and is really helping us out a lot. It's very customizable. You can delay how often it comes up. You can delay when it comes up. So there's all sorts of techniques that you can use to refine that so it's not annoying. Rick is asking, hey Rick, good to see you on the call. Rick's asking, would you ever use 2 different gifts on a different page? Oh yeah, I think it's a great idea. Like maybe a free 30-minute consultation on one page and a free ebook on the other page. It's a really good actually A/B strategy. I've actually, Rick, never seen anybody do it, but it's actually quite simple. It's quite simple on WordPress because most WordPress sites will allow you to have different widgets on different pages. So it's actually a super good idea. And then you can just simply track it by the response you get on that gift. Great idea, actually. I'm going to steal that idea. You can invite them to an event, which is a really great way to get opt-ins. So how does that work? Well, for example, when people came to my webinar yesterday, we had over 300 people register for that webinar. Well, if they're not already on my list, they have to register. So that adds them to the list, and so we automatically get opt-ins. And so the event is the kind of like the urgency that gets people to take action. So the fact that I have a webinar coming up or whatever that event is that I'm going to be promoting, that's a reason why people are going to come and have to opt in. And you can use something like lead pages is a really simple way to create those kind of invitations, and then just have them simply go through your normal funnel, whether that's to Aweber or MailChimp or Constant Contact for the double opt-in. You can co-host an event. I should say an event, actually. Co-host an event, and what I mean by that is, for example, a number of times over the year, I will actually have a colleague that we will do a webinar together, and we will host the webinar. And what happens then is, of course, they have to send their list to me, and so their people will actually register on my list in order to be on the event. LinkedIn Pulse. So one of our SOS members, Rodney Brim, put me onto LinkedIn Pulse just like 2 weeks ago, and we're seeing really good results, and that actually can drive opt-ins. And that's simply a free article site on LinkedIn, which is available if you have a business page on LinkedIn. I'll show you that in just a minute. And then finally, SlideShare, which I probably talked about a lot, but SlideShare continues to amaze me with the traffic that it generates for my site and the opt-ins, like in the order of over 800 in a month from SlideShare. So this is LinkedIn Pulse. So I've got 3 articles put up, and some of these have over 300 views already, and we're starting to get comments on them, and they've only been up about 3 days. So these are LinkedIn articles called Pulse. It used to be called Influencers, and now it's open to anybody who has a business page. This is my SlideShare. This is something you might want to do if you've got some slow time over the holidays. Is put together, take one of your SlideShare decks and just dress it up. So some of my SlideShare shows now have, well, this top one is over 26,000 views, but what's more important is that this one on positivity has actually driven almost 900 people to our opt-in, just that one alone. This is an example of my weekly statistics. So look at the green numbers. Another 171 people looked at it. Another 164 people looked at this one, 164. So in total, I had 623 more people look at it in the last week alone. And on most of these, actually all of these, I believe, there's an opt-in offer at the end that drives them to a lead page offer. These are various opt-in invitations. And I'm not going to go over these in great detail, but the reason I wanted to show these to you was that what you can see is that sometimes they don't have to have necessarily a gift that they're being given. So for example, this one here from Social Triggers, which is a hugely popular site, there's no actual gift here that you're being offered. The same thing over here. This is actually a site that I'm trying to remember the name of this site actually, but again, there's no gift on here. And this is Ann Handley over here, and she's got no gift. So these bottom 3, there's really no gift that's being offered. It's just an attractive invitation. But what I like is the language. So for example, join at least a handful of your peers, and all of Ann's relatives get new posts by email. So it's quirky, it's kind of fun. It's called Total Anarchy. I'm intrigued already. This one says, get updates is free. Learn how psychology helps you get traffic and sales with Social Triggers newsletter. And over here, join thousands who get exclusive content, videos, and deals you won't find anywhere else. So all 3 of these make me really intrigued. And I love this middle one because what he's also got a quote from Chris Brogan. I'm totally loving Social Triggers. So there's already some social proof that this is something that I probably want to join on. So I would encourage you just to experiment with these opt-in boxes. It doesn't cost you anything, and just try it for a month, or try a different gift, or try a different language. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's just a really simple way to start seeing if you can actually improve your results with your opting. Ultimately that's what SOS is for, is to get the traffic onto that list, and it's up to you to make sure that you've really got the sort of like the lure piece there that's going to really finish that cycle for you. Okay. I want to cover 2 more points. One is how to get more followers on social media. Again, as I said earlier, the way that SOS works, of course, is that we push traffic or posts out to social media, but you need to have a, kind of like a critical mass on social media in order for that to work. And so, for example, on Twitter, if you're not following very many people on Twitter, that's going to make it difficult for you to get followers. And so, first thing you want to do is go follow a couple of dozen people on Twitter just to get that inertia going, and then have them follow you back, and then start going ahead and inviting other people to follow you and follow other people, and just get that cycle going, because the more followers you've got, the more impact that all of our social media posts are going to have for you. So first thing you do is invite people to join you on, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Google+, in your email signature or on your website. You can add a Facebook like box or fan box. Now, we don't have one anymore on our site. We just found that it crowded the site, but that's very easy to do, and you can easily Google that. There's tons of people that will show you how to add a like box to your website, and that's the box where you see a miniature version of your friends that are following you on Facebook, and it's a really easy way for people to click the like button and to join your Facebook as a follower. You should be accepting your LinkedIn connections quickly, so you will be receiving those probably by email, and it's really important just to quickly go accept and just to get that cycle going so that it's just kind of good social form. And then I usually try to follow up with a question or something that's going to get a conversation started. So in particular, if I see that the person that is following me on LinkedIn is a speaker, then I will probably reach out to them and ask them a question about what they're working on or what they're trying to improve in the current year. And that just gets a bit of a conversation going. I find that that's actually been really useful for example, with SOS. So I ask them a question. Comment back as quick as you can. So all of the social media sites are going to get you more traffic the more comments there are. So the more people like, the more people comment. And so a really simple strategy, including on your blog, is as soon as somebody comments is to right away comment back, and just to get that whole reciprocal motion going, but also to build up some social capital so you're going to get more traction. Experiment with your header image. So the header image is across the top of your Twitter feed, your Facebook page, and just put different images up there. It doesn't really make much difference. I would not play around with your avatar image, your actual head image, but certainly you can play around with your background image. And then direct message people on Twitter if you are both following each other, which is a really great way to get attention. So for example, in my last slide share, I had one of the A-listers that I mentioned in that slide share contact me directly and asked me if I could just change his quote a little bit, and so we started direct messaging each other, and so it just gives me a little bit more capital with that one person if I want to ask a favor, like for example interview him on my podcast. So just a bunch of ideas on getting more followers that you can start to tackle. I typically spend about 10 minutes, maybe 15 on social media in a day, and that's about it because I let SOS do the rest of the work. But when I go on there, I'm very directed towards I thank everybody that followed me on Twitter, and then often if I see a connection, I'll ask them a question. I do the same thing on LinkedIn. And on Facebook, I try to generate comments and comment quickly as fast as I can. And also using video more on Facebook, as directly loading video seems to be getting me a lot more traction. Okay. Charlie says, if a new connection on LinkedIn is unwilling to interact with you, do you remove them as a connection? That's a great question. Like, I don't, Charlie. It's kind of a, to me, I'm going to assume the best. I'm going to assume they're busy, distracted. So I give it one shot. And again, I only go after the people that I think I actually can have an immediate connection with. So speakers is a natural alliance because I am a speaker. So I will ask them a question. If they want to start a dialogue, which they almost always do, then there's a reason why they're following me in the first place, right? They must assume there's something that is a benefit for them. So that usually works. But if they don't respond, I just move on. I don't actually worry too much about that. But it's a great question. Thank you. Okay. Last thing we're going to cover in the last 2 minutes as I zoom through these. And again, this will be all recorded as a video. This is just to help you, let you know what kind of things we're working on right here. Most of these things I'm experimenting with right now. And if not, we will be in the next 60 days. Okay, so last thing I want to do is what you can do right now to make SOS work for you even more than it already is. First thing is campaigns. And this is a huge topic, but very briefly, I really encourage you to print out an entire year's calendar, if you haven't done so already, and start mapping out your campaigns for next year. And what I mean by a campaign is anything that is going to have a pre, a during, and a post cycle, and anything that generates urgency for your membership or for your followers. So for example, if you've got a webinar coming up, if you've got an offer coming up, if you've got a release coming up of a new book, if you are going to be promoting a conference or a coaching program, those are called campaigns. And what that's going to do is it's going to give special attention during that period that you won't get any other way. And so, I don't know, kind of like a quick rule of thumb is every 90 days is to have something on your calendar. even if you just have to manufacture something. In other words, you're going to go and do a survey and ask your customers for some feedback, which is a great thing to do in the first quarter of the year. Add more authority sites. So we're always curious to know who it is that you're following and finding valuable. If you've got an authority site which is high traffic, non-competing, just send it over to us and we'll try to include that into your social media mix. Respond to followers as quickly as you can so they know that you're interested in them. After all, they reached out to you. Comment back as quickly as you can to generate more of that social capital. Write more content based on top posts. Send queries to media, which is something I'm going to get back into doing. A query is simply where you're asking them, would they like to repost what you've already written? Would they like a version of that? So you just take your last blog post and just ask them if they think that this might be something they want to include in Business Insider or on Huffington Post or whatever media you're looking for. And then the last one is, which is kind of a secret sauce of mine, is to get invitations from podcasters. So it's a really simple idea. Most podcasters, or a lot of podcasters, especially in the business space or in self-improvement space, are interview-based podcasts. So they need content, they need interviewees, and so you can just write them a really quick sort of 3-sentence email, compliment them on their show, tell them what you do, and ask if they want to include you as one of the future interviewees. All right, folks, so there you go. There's 45 minutes at a blistering pace. All of this is available at SOS-member-resources, and we're going to continue to update that and add so that is a really useful resource for you. This webinar recording will be up there probably by the end of the day. Thanks for being a part of SOS. Really appreciate your trust in us as we grow and as we pivot. And I hope that this has been helpful for you. And I hope also that you guys have a great Christmas and really take some time to enjoy the fruits of your labor and all the hard work that you put into building up your enterprise. If you've got any questions about this webinar, please shoot them off to me at info@hughculver.com or hugh@hughculver.com, and we'll certainly get back to you as quick as we can. Thanks again for being on the webinar. Take care, everybody, and we'll talk to you really soon. Thanks.